Everyone, great to be back with you all again. If you haven't been able to tell from past videos of mine, I've really been enjoying my time discovering and playing games on Nintendo's Famicom system. For those who don't know what a Famicom is, without going into too many specifics, it is essentially Japan's original version of the system we'd later call the Nintendo, or NES, or NES, depending on your preference. There were certainly plenty of differences aside from that, with the look and feel of the systems down to their inner workings, but this was more or less the same way Japan experienced 8-bit gaming from Nintendo, just as we did. Half the fun of playing these has been the feelings of nostalgia that 8-bit sounds and graphics can give you, while finding out about all kinds of games we simply never got to play out here in the West. But of course not all of us speak Japanese, and therefore can't really enjoy most of the games out there without some type of guide or translation patch, right? Wrong. I'm happy to say there are actually quite a few titles out there that work great for English speakers, and I'm happy to share some of them with you now. While I've seen plenty of videos on this topic before, I think I've got enough contributions I haven't seen anywhere else yet to make this one worthwhile. So let's have some fun and take a look at Famicom games that are great for English speakers. Are you a fan of the classic Super Mario Bros. Or Sonic the Hedgehog games? Then Armadillo may be right up your alley. The game features all kinds of worlds with action and platforming to boot, with the standout feature being the Armadillo's ability to roll into a ball and go up ramps and other platforms, similar to the way Sonic the Hedgehog would just a few months earlier. And with a large map similar to the one seen in Super Mario Bros. 3, there's all kinds of worlds and levels to explore. Japanese dialogue in this game is minimal, with most of the text containing small hints about playing that can easily be figured out by the player, and some small bits of dialogue between Armadillo and the boss characters, missing girlfriend Cheryl, and the main villain Fatmadillo. Yes, that's seriously his name. Although it does have a steep learning curve with getting used to the ball form, levels that are essentially clones of other ones, and some admittedly difficult final stages, I feel this one dropped under many people's radars and deserved much more recognition than we ever saw it get out here. Platforming fans would do well to give it a spin. Do you like Pac-Man? That's a trick question, of course you do. You may be interested to learn that Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, yes, the Mario and Zelda creators themselves, put their own spin on the formula with Devil World in 1984. The game has you play as a green dragon named Tamagon, navigating Pac-Man-like stages in order to find and defeat the devil himself. Unlike Pac-Man, the stages constantly rotate, forcing the player to stay on guard in order to avoid getting squashed. Tamagon can also attack enemies with crosses that he grabs for a limited amount of time, which decreases with every passing round. This is also the only way for him to eat the dots on the screen and get to the second stage. The next stage has you grabbing 4 Bibles to place in the center of the screen in order to make the devil begin to flee. Finally, the player gets a bonus round to grab more points and extra lives before it starts over again. You also see new enemies populate the game for the first 9 rounds before it starts repeating. All in all, a surprisingly fun and robust little Pac-Man style game, and one I may like even more than the original Pac-Man itself, which is saying something. I'm not going to lie to you, this one's a little difficult to describe. Thankfully, that doesn't matter much since it's really fun to play. Astro Robosassa has you playing either alone or cooperatively, with the goal of blasting your way through enemies while maintaining enough bullets to get you through each individual stage. It's unique in that the bullets not only hit targets, but actually propel the character around the screen, enabling you to change your direction and navigate the entire play area while taking down all of the game's various enemies. And there's no Japanese text or dialogue to speak of, as the game's main menu is in English. Just watch out for those water stages though, they can be a real doozy. Beating this one felt very rewarding, and if you win, you get to do it all over again with whatever bullets you had left over while continuing to increase that high score. Are you a fan of the classic Castlevania games? Did you enjoy them but decide you wanted something even harder to beat? Well, you're in luck. Developed by IREM, Holy Diver is based off the famous Ronnie James Dio album of the same name, and even has main characters named after Ozzy Osbourne and guitarists like Randy Rhoads and Zakk Wylde. Unlike Castlevania, the game equips you with a limited range magic projectile weapon and has you accumulate magic points to use other spells and abilities as you delve farther into it. It has a total of 6 brutal stages with equally wild boss fights at the end of them. When I tell you this game is difficult, I assure you that I mean it. Fun and rewarding, but not for the faint of heart. Up the irons. Underrated for a multitude of reasons, including its release date, which was already years into the Super Famicom's lifestyle, Joymec Fight is a 2D fighting game, having you play as and fight against various combinations of robot characters. On top of having a shocking amount of characters in it, 36 to be exact, This fighter also features some impressively smooth character animations and responsive controls, no doubt thanks to Nintendo's R&D1 team's use of the character sprites, taking out the arm and leg details to allow more of a focus on smoother and steady gameplay. With a fun single-player and versus mode, and a surprisingly robust quest mode with multiple boss characters, not seeing this one come to the United States was a huge missed opportunity. You don't have to be a fan of Power Rangers or Super Sentai to enjoy this one, but it helps. Based off the series of the same name, Chojin Sentai Jetman, also known as Birdman Squad Jetman, has you play through 6 stages, with the last unlocked after beating the original 5. You start out by picking one of the 5 Jetman characters, and go through a side-scroller action shooter stage, fighting various groups of enemies along the way, up until you reach a boss at the end. During these stages, you can also use a special token to eliminate all enemies on screen, and if your character dies, you can pick up another character and start from the last checkpoint they left off at, essentially giving you 5 lives for each stage. The characters also have some variety, as some specialize in swordplay, while others use blasters, etc. There's also a high kick move that's extremely handy for those overhead enemies. The boss fights are just like the series, with a monster growing super large and your team facing off against them in a giant mecha, known as Great Icarus. The combat here can be really clunky and difficult, but still pretty rewarding. These fights are like endurance tests where you need to memorize the enemy's attack patterns, block consistently, and know when to step in for a punch. You also get a nice super meter for special attacks to bring the boss's health down faster. It's even got a mode where you can practice the boss fights, which helps ease the difficulty up a bit. While not particularly groundbreaking, I did find the whole thing to be surprisingly functional and worth playing through, just to see the stage layout and boss patterns. Badou Meza! I may be showing my age with this one, but one of the first animes I remember really getting into as a kid was Samurai Pizza Cats, better known to Japan and the rest of the world as Kyoto Ninden Tendi. Imagine my surprise to find out that not only was there a licensed game by Tecmo, i.e. the team behind Ninja Gaiden, but that it was actually quite good. What you get is a fun 2D platformer with small groups of levels that you can choose to play in any order you wish, each containing enemies, platforming, and unique boss fights at the end. As if getting to choose from any of the 3 main characters in the show wasn't enough, you're also able to select members of the rescue squad from the series, who can use their special abilities to help you dig, swim, break blocks, and even fly. It's like Mega Man, but slightly more lenient. Aside from being on the easy side, as this game was designed for younger kids, mind you really can't go wrong with this one. The spoken dialogue is all in Japanese, but it won't hinder your enjoyment of the game itself, though I would recommend looking up the game's script at some point, as some of the jokes are admittedly hilarious. Now that we've finished talking about an easier title, let's go for a more difficult one. Developed by Sunsoft, Gimmick stars a yokai, or supernatural being, named Yumataro, who gets mistaken for a toy and picked up by a young girl. The toys in her room grow jealous of the attention that Yumataro is receiving, and respond by transporting the girl into another dimension. Harsh. While looking like another typical 2D platformer on the surface, this game has quite a few things to separate it from the pack. By holding down a button, Yumataro can conjure up a star, which he can use to throw at oncoming enemies, or, if timed right, the star can even be used to carry Yumataro across certain terrain. While not required at first, this becomes an essential element for getting from place to place. If you couldn't tell from the last statement, the game is hard. Cruel, in fact. It may look like Kirby on the surface, but even a few minutes of play will show you otherwise. It will eat you up, and spit you out without so much as a second thought. Combine this with the colorful landscapes, interesting enemy designs, and some tricky but rewarding boss encounters, and you've got yourself an underrated little gem from late into the Famicom's life cycle. Not for the faint of heart, but well worth it if you can take the time to understand the game's mechanics. After all, there's a reason this one is so popular among the speedrunner community. And that's all for now. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Have you played any of these games yourself, or have any suggestions of your own? Feel free to leave some comments below and let me know. And if you're feeling really generous, please consider supporting my Patreon, where awesome people like Jonathan, Brandon, Erica, and Cielo all help to keep this channel going. Until next time.